So, thanks everyone for joining us. Welcome. My name is Audria Tops-Harjo, and I am the founder of InclusionFX and the CEO of A44 Games here in Wellington, New Zealand. I'm such a pleasure to bring you such distinguished guests. For the longest time, the world has not seen the talent and the depth of passion that comes from our called Black unicorns, the underrepresented peoples who work in the games and entertainment industry, and wanted to change all of that. So really, for much ado, it's really underrepresented peoples, and we're representing, and we are here. And I'm just such a pleasure to introduce you to one of most of my favorite people in the whole world, known them forever, Sheena Dougal, who is the current visual effects supervisor on Venom 2. She's working on 2 continents right now remotely. VES Lifetime Award winner, 3, VES Lifetime Award winner. Next up is Lyndon Barwar, who's an amazing artist. Was the animation director on the Matrix trilogy, works with the Smithsonian, does amazing outreach work, just an incredible artist. Next we have Wayne Kennedy, who I've known for forever. Wayne and I worked together at Sony Pictures, worked at Digital Domain. He's currently senior producer of in-game cinematics at Blizzard. And Lalani Ramirez. Lalani has worked for Naughty Dog, Uncharted. She worked for Sony, for Spider-Man. We worked together at EA. Now she's a BAFTA Award winner for God of War. Thank you so much for joining us, Lalani, game dialogue supervisor. And Yvonne, she's such an incredible artist. She's a map painter. She has her own studio. She's calling us from Kenya, her own studio. And she's also a VES award winner for her map painting work on Avatar. Thank you, and so happy to have you guys here. We're so excited. So I wanted to start without much ado. If Sheena, if you could start, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, no problem, Audria. So, I first had the opportunity to work really hard and seized it in 1995. I was kind of in the right place at the right time. It was just when a lot of technology was starting to become more available to people. And I first started my career working in London on paint systems, doing design work. So that led me to work with George Harrison and do the first Trevor Wilburys album cover. And I worked with Elton John and Prince and a few other people. And at some point around about 1992, somebody had seen my work, and I got a phone call saying, would you like to come to Los Angeles and work on Super Mario Brothers on a software called Flame, which no one's ever used before. And so I got on a plane and I flew to SIGGRAPH and I checked out this Flame software, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And so I hopped on a plane to LA without ever meeting anyone here. I didn't know anyone here, and I'd never used the software, and it was an amazing time. It was all very bleeding edge, and it was fun, and we were experimenting with technology, and we'd take on projects we didn't even know if we could get them done, as you will remember, Audria.
Yes.
On Contact and ImageWorks, and so. So I ended up being essentially one of the first Flame artists in the world, and that opened a lot of doors for me and led me to ILM. And so I was at ILM through the mid-90s, and then left ILM with a large team of people to set up Sony Pictures ImageWorks. And I was there for about 14 years, and then I left to go work on production side. I did the Hunger Games. I was at Marvel for about 5 years. Which was a fantastic opportunity as well, because I actually did a couple of seasons of Agent Carter. So as well as doing film, I figured I should learn how to work in TV and how that, it's a very different pace of working and different set of skills required. And so, working production side, supervising major motion pictures.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. It's incredible. Lyndon, so please tell us about yourself, sir.
Oh wow. God, I gotta follow Sheena. Jesus. Um,
I'm
no,
sure.
so, yeah, grew up in New Orleans. Went to Xavier U for undergrad studying art, and then went to Cal Arts for film school and for masters, and studied animation. And what got me there was these miniatures that I make. Because I wanted to actually learn how to animate them. So when I learned how to animate, and this was all stop motion animation. So I learned to do that in Cal Arts and did, 3 stop mo films there. And then when I graduated, I was, my first film job was going to be Mars Attacks. Because at that point, Mars Attacks was all stop motion. So I was just pumped. Oh, shit. But, it was the heyday of CG. So, Toy Story had come out, Jurassic Park was out, and so everyone was like, "Oh my God, we got to do this digital stuff." And I was like, "Damn," So the whole stop motion pipeline got scrapped, and the show went to ILM so it could become, a CG show. And I had zero computer experience, so I figured, okay, now I got to redirect this and figure out how to, learn software. So I applied a specifically targeted studios that I knew would train animators to use the software. And so I got hit by R&H and Disney. And R&H was a variety of stuff, because I would have done films and games and commercials, the whole shebang, with pretty rapid turnarounds. And Disney was Dinosaur, where I would have been working on for 3 years. So before I saw, would see any of my work. And so I was like, I'd rather go to the other place, so I do more variety of stuff and build a reel. And so that's what I did. And so 3 years into R&H, I did build a nice reel, and then I got the opportunity to actually go back into the stop motion world and direct an episode of the PJ. And so I did that. And then since then, I've just been directing mostly in the CG world and for feature films. And, one opportunity leads to another, so from Scooby-Doo to The Matrix to, whatever. And so lots of travel, spent, Happy Feet, all of that. Just a blast to do that kind of work. It's just been an incredible ride. And so now after, 20 years of doing like 20 or 21 films, I took a detour for a while and did a lot of, VR work for 5 years, creating some projects that we took to, Sundance and Tribeca and Cannes. And then, but the VR bubble, has burst basically. I mean, none of us would be able to figure that out. So now I've gone full circle, and I'm back mostly now doing my miniatures again, making films with those and exhibiting in galleries and museums. And then I also am doing a lot of work with the Unreal Engine. So I was just one of the fellows, and I'm doing another project right now with Unreal. It's actually sitting right here. So. It's just a constant practice. We're always doing something. So who knows what's coming up? More features, more TV? I have no idea. It's wide open.
That's great. Thanks, Lyndon.
Just having fun.
Thanks so much. Wayne, tell us about about yourself.
Thanks, Audra. This is great. My background is quite varied. I'm born in London, and I grew up wanting to draw comic books. Of course, that's something that totally disturbed my parents, because who makes a living doing comic books? So my studies were more in the graphic design area, because that was more practical and sensible, even though it wasn't something that interested me. But creativity and the arts and entertainment is definitely what drew my heart. And so my first experiences were working in traditional animation, actually, and from a cell painter, which that doesn't exist anymore, but actually painting the reverse of cells for animations, to color separation at Emblemation. That was Spielberg's animation studio in London that he opened up. I got to really hone my 2D skills and use that to actually get jobs afterwards in the game industry. Back in the early 90s, working for Psygnosis and for Sega. But back then it was all 2D stuff, but they did start to introduce some 3D applications to some of their game development. And that was the first time I had seen anything like that. There were no schools back then to teach you how to use this stuff. So I had to train myself up on the weekends when I could. I was fascinated by it. It seemed exciting. And this is when, big films were starting to come out, right, in the US. So I trained up to be a 3D artist for a while. And then for some reason, I decided to apply for a job at Industrial Light and Magic, which was in the US. Didn't think at all that they would even get back to me at all. But they did. They seemed to like my reel, gave me an interview. Very different back then. It was just a phone call. There was no video chat or anything else like that. They seemed to like me, offered me a job. I was elated. And this was back in 95. Flew me over. I met them on a Monday. Got to say they're a little bit shocked because my last name is Kennedy and I'm English, and then they saw me. So it was a bit different from what they had imagined. But it was great. It was a good place to be. I learned a lot from that company, some really, really great people. And I was there for 3 years, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And so in the beginning, I was a generalist. So you did everything from animation and modeling and texturing and things like that. Early in the industry, they kind of got you to focus on one thing. And so when ILM hired me, it was like, what do you want to be? And I was like, oh, okay, digital modeler. So I stayed in that realm for a while and became a model supervisor and an asset supervisor, ImageWorks and Digital Domain, running the departments, but really understanding the pipeline flow, how it works. Got to work on some really great movies, some terrible movies too, because VFX, it's all over the board, as we know. But I was also very interested in the production side of things too. My brain works in two ways. It's the creative and the artistic, but I also love the producing aspect of it. And so I got into production management, and at Digital Domain, I got to run their creative department, creating original content for TV and film development. We produced some VR properties, which was great. We had a partnership with DreamWorks and did their Voltron VR Chronicles, and did some work with the NBA and Google for a VR project too. And those were really, really fascinating. Got to meet some interesting people and some legends of the NBA, which was absolutely fantastic. So between that and independent film production, my skills have varied a lot, but I've always enjoyed the process of learning and meeting new people and doing different things. And that's what excites me the most. And then most recently, I'm producing for in-game cinematics for a company called Blizzard Entertainment. I didn't think I would get back into games. It's a very strange turn of events, but it fascinated me because I wanted to do something I hadn't done for a while. It's always about the challenge and the next thing, and this was a good thing for me to do. So I was really excited about that. So being in the US for a long time now, so this is definitely my home. And love what I'm doing and just keep moving forward.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Wayne. Lalani, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My Leilani here, and I'm a girl from Hawaii, and tying into Wayne's story about, fooling people with their names. A lot of people get confused because I have a Hawaiian first name and a Spanish last name, so they think I'm Latina and Hawaiian, but I completely fool them and say I'm Asian and I'm Filipino. So, but I grew up in Hawaii. I got into the entertainment industry kind of on the fact that I was a huge, actually, Janet Jackson fan. And I knew I couldn't really sing, nor was I was an okay dancer, I guess you could say. But I was fascinated by it. I would look at the album covers back then and saw that there is something called a recording engineer. And so I loved the technical aspect, but I also wanted to also do something creative. And so I kind of deviated from the path of, normally for my father, who wanted me to be a doctor. And I completely threw him for a loop and said I wanted to go into the entertainment industry. So I kind of had to do a presentation to my dad about the colleges that provided recording arts programs, and said, I can still make a living off of that. And so I was fortunate enough to get into a program out here in Los Angeles, and I majored in recording arts, and I did a little bit of film and TV post-production work, and then I landed in EA, which is where I met Audria. And that was kind of the start of my gaming career. And I worked on multiple Medal of Honor titles, and primarily focused on dialogue. And that's kind of where my career has led me and driven me down to. So I freelanced for about 5 or 6 years, working on various projects with companies like Naughty Dog, working on Uncharted 3. And I've been now with Sony PlayStation for probably about 6 years, which is kind of a mix of contract work and now the last 4 years for with them as a manager of dialogue. And even though now I don't really kind of dive into the full creative work, getting my feet wet with like editorial and all that kind of stuff, I now have the ability now to kind of encourage and manage a staff to enlighten them about just how awesome game production is and game audio production is. And that is a different type of creativity that I've been had to get used to, but I've learned to kind of fully embrace. And it's exciting to see the different types of people coming out to enjoy game audio and wanting to get into it. So, and yeah, we've just wrapped up a few launch titles that are coming out for the new kit, and we're looking forward to it. And we just wrapped up Demon Souls, which is a huge one for us. And that in itself, the process of dealing with the mix and all that kind of stuff is a very unique thing. And I think that's something that I really, it's a kind of a niche craft of sorts in terms of dialogue and being able to tell stories. And that's something that is really kind of fun and empowering to be able to have that narrative flow work and be a part of that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's great. So, and last but not least, Yvonne, the mistress of the paint and the brush. Welcome.
Hi, Audrey. Hi, everyone. My name's Yvonne. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm originally from Kenya, grew up here. And my background is actually fine art and oil painting. And my focus was portraiture and narrative painting. I always said I never wanted to touch a computer. I never wanted to have anything to do with it, but never say never. And as life would have it, I needed to figure out how to use the computer. So graduated with fine art, was doing all the gallery painting route and exhibiting and having shows. And then along the way, I was fortunate enough to meet my partner, Philip, who is still my partner. I better plug that in now. But he was working in the film industry at that time at Tippett Studios. And actually, that was the first time I had ever been made aware that a painter or like a traditional painter could find a place in visual effects and film. And so Phil was the one who kind of got me introduced to the idea of being a matte painter or getting into matte painting. I struggled in the beginning because at that time there was no books, there was no school, there were a few books. I read The Invisible Art from beginning to end to try to figure out what is this thing and how do you do it. And fortunately enough, at that time I was in the Bay Area, and so I was surrounded by people in the film industry, surrounded by people in the games industry. And so you always get these moments in time, and the universe provides these different moments where you get guidance. And I was lucky enough to bump into an art director who was a cinematic director for games, and he just told me stop painting. But then he gave me the information and the wisdom for what I needed to do to transition into matte painting. And as it would have it, I started off at ILM in San Rafael. And that was probably the best year because that was my school of matte painting. It was 1 year of intensive matte painting because you were with the gods of matte painting. Some of those folks in the book were in the department. So that was a fantastic learning experience. It got me going. It got me working in a corporate structure, which was a whole nother learning curve from being a painter in a studio by yourself. And then as the visual effects industry has it, you move and you travel. So the next step was Australia, moved on to work on Happy Feet in Australia. And then from Australia, it was on to New Zealand. And that's where I met Audrey and got lucky to work with Audrey. So New Zealand was 8 years. I got an opportunity to be, I got to the position of head of department for matte painting at Weta. And at that time as well, got the last VES for matte painting for Avatar, because it doesn't exist anymore, which is a shame. But so after 8 years in New Zealand and a lot of learning and a lot of experiences and a lot of different shows, it was time to move off the island. And we headed up to Vancouver, where I was at Scanline VFX for 4 years, working as matte painting supervisor. Again, it was really fantastic, because with each of these companies, you pick up more skills, you pick up more networks. Coming from New Zealand after 8 years up to North America was like being plugged back into the highway, because we were on the country road for many years in New Zealand. But after a while, I've always wanted to come back home, which is Nairobi. And I've always thought, why can't we do this here? What is stopping us? And to be honest, remote working, when I first came across, we've been here now for 2 years. Nobody was working at home. It was such a novelty, but now everybody's at home, and I'm like, But I think we've transitioned across this side. We're trying to set up my husband and I are partnering to make Equator Arts, which is our little shop on the equator. And so I've continued working remotely. I've branched my skill sets to be more concept art, which I thoroughly enjoy, and it's taken me back to painting, to my painting, and as well doing matte painting, and then we're trying to do as well original content. And so got my chance to make my first pitch Bible this week, so I was very excited about that, and it turned out really good. So now we'll see where that takes us. But for now, let's see where it takes us and what can happen. But I still paint traditionally and want to bring that back into my focus.
That's great.
That's me.
That's great. Thanks everybody for all of your stories. I do have a question. I'm just going to throw it out there. Did you find that your work experience was different based upon either your gender or your color? Do you think you were treated differently, or did it make you special, or how did that make you feel? Anybody could jump in and answer.
I have an answer for that. When I first began my career, I'd literally gone where no man had gone before. I mean, it was, I think everybody sort of touched on it in these conversations. There were no books, there were no manuals. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were learning from each other or experimenting. And gender and didn't really come into it back in the early days. But what I found quite interesting, I think we've talked about this before, Audria, is as it started to become a bigger business, sort of in the early 2000s, it seemed like a lot of the higher paying creative jobs were exclusively reserved for the male colleagues. And as I was sort of just had my head down, using my creativity and using my skills and my talent to sort of help, tell stories, which was what I loved doing, I wasn't really paying attention to what was happening. And then suddenly I sort of realized all these people that I was working with who were working for me even were given opportunities that weren't being afforded to me. And I think that persisted for quite a long time. And certainly, that there was a handful of people of color, also working in the industry. And I ticked the gender and the diversity boxes, but that people weren't looking for people like us who have a different perspective, who have different ideas, because I think, when you are a woman, or when you are a person of color, you have more challenges. You don't get as many opportunities. You have to work a lot harder. And so you aren't always as like-minded as some of the people that you're working with, but you think out of the box. So you actually have an advantage, in my opinion, in a creative sense. I think that shift just starting to shift, and I'm really excited to hear everybody's stories here today. I just wanted to say thank you. I was really enjoying hearing your stories, and I think what we're doing right now is really, really important. in this sort of time and place with Me Too, with hashtag Me Too and hashtag Black Lives Matter, that, you know, we've come together as a group of experienced filmmakers, and we're using our voices to enable other people so they don't have to come up against the same kinds of obstacles that we did, you know, getting to where we are in our careers. And I'll let somebody else speak, because I've talked quite a while. But
thanks, Sheena. That's fantastic. No, that's great. Does anyone else want to make a comment?
I'll just have a short one to add. I agree with all of that, and I think it's absolutely spot on. I think the other obvious thing that happens is that we're in the industry, especially when we started out, where you definitely realize you're a minority, right? You look around and there weren't many people that looked like you. And, you know, you want to focus and you work hard and you do your best, but you also know that there's a responsibility there, whether you want it or not. You do realize that there's other people that are going to come after you. And so you are representing something. And it might be unfair, but it's just the way it is. So you have this extra kind of burden. So you're trying to succeed for yourself and do the best for your dreams, but you're also trying to say, I want to make it a bit easier for someone else. And if I don't get on with someone or someone doesn't work out, are they going to like stereotype? Shouldn't, but it may happen, right? When you're in a studio of 900 people and there's 3 of you of your shade, it becomes very, very important. So those are things that you know, I think all of us are carrying with us throughout our careers. And even though it's improved, it's not fast enough. And there's definitely still quite a gap and a long ways to go to have that equality in the workplace, I believe.
That's great. Lyndon, did you want to add?
That's interesting. Those are great points, Wayne, and completely. It's interesting Sheena made that connection to economics, because it immediately made me think of, you know, my thesis film at Cal Arts. I did a film on the black jockeys that won the Kentucky Derby. So it's an animated documentary. And when everyone asked me, you know, well, what happened? Where's the involvement now? I said, well, it's economics. When it became a lucrative sport and turned into a business, they filtered us all out.
yeah,
And so that's when, you know, cut to what Sheena's saying. Like, it's weird that happens that way, because when we get the opportunities to do anything that we step into, we really excel at it when we do the work. But when you're prevented from those opportunities, or you're not exposed to them, you just don't know. And so it's really crucial that we do this, because it's all about exposure, and it's all about letting people know that we do this work. We've been doing it for a long time. I mean, you know, it's just a damn shame that it takes tragedies to happen to us for people to get woke and start, you know, putting an eye on it. Because we're, you know, like I started, like all of us, we started doing this like in the, you know, early and mid 90s. And it's weird that we're still having this conversation. You know, I went to the Bake Off, and of the 40 people that presented, there was nobody black, and I think 1 woman, maybe 2. And I'm shocked, because like, I know there's more of us that do the work. And you just go, how is this still the case? So we just got to rewrite this narrative and keep doing it.
I completely agree. And I've been working with the Academy with these sort of goals in mind as well, with the A2020, and trying to make people aware of their surroundings and sort of, you know, I don't know what happened to you guys, but what happened to me is I just kind of had my head down working, doing my thing. And then when I realized I'd achieved some degree of success, I kind of looked around and wondered what had happened to all the women and people of color who were there with me at the start. Mm-hmm. And it just sort of felt like they didn't get elevated through the system, for want of a better word.
If I could add on, kind of continuing on from Sheena's point, the aspect of what happens, why do people drop out? You know, why you start with people and then there's no one in a supervising position. But I think one thing I could reference from what I found as a real challenge in my life, and what made me actually switch directions, was becoming a mom and finding out that this industry chews you up and spits you out if you have taken, for some reason, you become someone with a disability, or you become, you know, in the sense that you are not available, you can't do the extra hours, but already what the hours are required are ridiculous. They're not logical. So our sense of normal, just like in reference to the world that we're in, what was normal before, now in COVID, suddenly it's not normal. It was never normal. Our extremes just push so high up that we lose what actually makes sense. So I think what I always find through all these conversations and all these movements is we can set all these agendas and all these goals, but at what point, what are the things that the roadblocks pop up that people just can't get over that bump? And if it's for women who want to make a choice to go and be mothers and do not have the support, the industry should allow them to be both. You can be both, So, and also with minorities and it's the schools, so the line has to shift back. We have to figure out where are the pivot points and where are the bits that spit people out. And then I think, and then exposure, because I think that's, for me, when I speak to people on this side of the world, folks don't actually know what we're talking about in terms of visual effects or this industry, because the opportunities are not there, and they're not. And like you said, I can consider myself lucky because I was at the right place at the right time, or was fortunate enough to find right people along the way, so.
Speaking of kind of exposure to that, I just recently had a conversation with some of my team here about, yes, the people that we want to find to fill in for these supervisory roles, they are predominantly, especially in the audio world, it's predominantly white men. And it's interesting because, for me, growing up in Hawaii, there's the minority was the majority for me, surrounding me every day. There was, Hawaiians, there's different types of Asians, there were also whites, there was also blacks. But so for me, when I grew up, it was somewhat colorblind because everyone was just, I just saw different shades. But it wasn't until I moved up to Los Angeles that it became a little bit more, I realized like, oh, okay, I am of a different color, and that I had to kind of figure out, like, still have the driving determination to get to where I want. But yes, there was, I had to find the right people, and the right people had to find me to kind of help mentor me, to guide me to where I wanted to go. And in regards to the conversations that I've had with my teams here, they want to be active. They want to try and find create diversity within our groups. But I also had to say it's a two-way street, right? Not only do I have to, share my experiences with those communities, I go, you also have to share that and let them know that you are open to it. Because if that's not, that message isn't coming across from everyone, then it's still going to be a very kind of, select group that's going to succeed. Regardless of how hard you work, you still need to open that door to everyone to let them know that they have a chance and have the opportunity to rise just as much as they do.
Yeah. And that's where the tough skin comes in, and being very confident and doing the work, constant practice, and being shamelessly demanding. Because if you're too quiet, no one's going to notice. You have to demand what you want, and when they question that shit, you just go, why not? So and so got that opportunity, why not? And you just never let that go.
No.
Yeah.
Over obstacles.
That's fantastic, you guys. Oh, well, look, we've run out of time.
What?
I know. We can talk forever because it's so amazing, because we're going to do this again. But I want to thank you guys so much.
You're scratching the surface.
I know. We got to leave it for next time. Leave a little in the tank. Leave a little in the tank. But that's great. But the next time we're going to be hopefully talking to some supervisors. Greg Anderson and Andrew Roberts going to talk about their life on the on set and doing what they do. But I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your stories and your perspective. It's been, like you said, a long road, but I'm hoping this is just the beginning. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We're gonna do more of these. Can't wait. And thank you so much. And thank you so much for all my wonderful friends and colleagues I've known for decades and decades. And so I so appreciate
Thank you, Audra. This is great.
Thank you, Pops. Yeah, this is great, Pops. This is awesome to be on the first broadcast. Yeah. Proud to be with all of you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
We have so much more to say.
I know.
You'll get your chance. All right, you guys.
We're all connected.
Thank you so much. You guys sign off. Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care.
Take care.